Have you ever heard the term, stress kills? It may seem like a far-fetched idea, but it may not be so far-fetched when we really think about it. Now, stress is typically that feeling you get whenever you're under pressure, whether it's physical, mental, or even emotional. Now, I've had some personal experience with stress, and in doing some research in today's modern medicine, I've learned a couple of things about stress, and today we're going to discover just how impactful it can really be to your body, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental. So today we're going to talk about what stress really is and how it works within the body. Now first, we have to understand what stress really is. So, major question, just what is stress? So Merriam-Webster will define stress in several different ways. In summary, it's going to be whenever pressure is applied to something physical, emotional, and that pressure is going to be what the term stress is going to be. Now today, we're going to focus on just the stress that we refer to whenever we see added pressure added to a person, and that's something that we usually don't see physically. And so after today, we'll discover how we can see that. Now the National Institute of Mental Health actually describes stress in 3 different ways. And we're going to learn about each type of stress here today. So first is going to be the more common one. This one is referred to as routine stress, something that we see on a daily basis. Now this is less impactful. You see this when you think about school, the deadlines, the schoolwork that is involved. We see that with work, with the deadlines there, with the work, the physicality, the mental stress that you can get when you're at work, or even some family issues that may come up. That can also cause some type of routine stress. Now we may notice it, or we may be accustomed to it. Just because it's a minor level of stress, sometimes we won't even notice that it's even there. So that feeling could be a little bit different from each person, and it can be really easy to overcome. Now this is all according to the American Institute of Stress and their findings on it. Now the second type is going to be referred to as a sudden negative change. Now this already sounds a little bit more dramatic than that routine stress that we just talked about, because it is. This is more impactful. This takes a little bit longer for somebody to overcome, and we see these in situations much more like in cases where it involves divorce. It involves somebody losing their job, or it can even be somebody that's become ill and they're getting over that. That can be a sudden negative change to somebody and take them a little bit longer than one may think or one may notice. And it's a little bit more evident than that routine stress that we talked about. Now the third is traumatic stress. Now that again, it already sounds like it's more impactful, and because it is. This is more of a life-changing event. This is something that's very evident in a person, and that's something that can take a lifetime to be able to overcome. And we see these in major accidents, we see these in natural disasters, and we even see these in those that are impacted by war, whether participating or know somebody that's been in there. And again, these are going to be just some of the different types of stress. Now that we know the bad kind of stress that we see, we're going to look at the good kind, right? So not all stress is bad. First and foremost, there are times that the same effects that we previously discussed actually bring out something good in each person and how they react to it. Now, stress can bring out the body's natural feelings, natural reactions, better said. And we see this in what's commonly referred to as a fight or flight reaction. Now, we hear this a lot in science class. We hear this in some of the nature shows that we might see, because it's a natural response. We see this anywhere from a predator all the way chasing down to their prey and how they respond to it. So first things first is going to be understanding how we see this in the wild. Again, it's a natural response, and in predators, they're going to fight to get their prey, get to their prey. They might have obstacles. The prey may be a little bit more elusive. They're going to fight in order to overcome that gap and overcome those obstacles in order to get to their prey. On the flip side of it, the prey is going to be fighting to make sure that they survive, so that the way they overcome their obstacles of an overbearing predator coming over them, and ultimately to stay alive, right? Now, as previously mentioned, we have the fight or flight response. Now, the flight response is something that we also see in nature. It's a natural response, and that one we typically see it when somebody is making an effort, one, to stay alive, or to get into a safe place, right, to survive. And we commonly see it more in people whenever they're going through traumatic stress. A major accident, for example, something traumatic like that happens, the instinct of the person is going to be to get to a safe place, get out of the place of danger, get somewhere safe. Meanwhile, they get the help they need, if any. Right? In a natural disaster like a hurricane, in our area, we tend to see a lot of that every year. And as we make preparations, we determine if it's going to be a very traumatic event to our specific area, we would take the flight reaction, flee to a safer place just to make sure that not only we survive, but our family is safe as well. So we've seen both sides of the coin. We've seen the bad side, we see the positive side of how stress can impact, and we see some of those reactions in there as well. Now we're going to talk about the long-term stress that we see in the body. Now this is commonly referred to as chronic stress, and we hear that a lot in the medical community here today, but really that's going to be simply meaning all these different types of stress that we've talked about. They can add up, they can stay there over time. We talked about how routine stress is there just about every day, and that extended period or exposure, according to the Mayo Clinic, can cause some physical, emotional, and mental reactions within our body. So first and foremost, we want to consider the impact that each one of those types, as we previously discussed, can have on the body. In addition, you might have a mix and match of those. So the weight of the routine stress can add up. You have more deadlines, more family issues, and it can quickly and over time become something that's more closely related to a sudden negative change. More added pressure can turn that situation into a traumatic change. And that's where we start to see the extended exposure to that added stress. It's kind of like that saying you have, you're taking that weight off of your shoulders once you overcome that stress, and you really feel the difference whenever something like that happens. It becomes things like routine stress. We see that very commonly. That can cause an underlying factor where we may not notice what that does not feel like, to the point where it can really add up, and we start to see the impacts when we get to some of that added stress level into a negative or even a traumatic experience. So long exposure to that can start to impact us physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, the Mayo Clinic has done a lot of research in some of these symptoms, and physically, we see that exposure come out in the form of headaches. We see that in people that have muscle tension or even muscle pain. That's a result of physical stress. And then we see that with people that are fatigued or even may have sleeping problems, right? We have two areas of the spectrum right there. Now we have some mental impacts that we're able to identify as a result, better said, of long-term stress or that chronic stress that we talked about. And this is going to be in the form of anxiety. We have the loss of mental focus, and we also see it in the forms of social withdrawal, which we are seeing more commonly nowadays. Now, it can also be seen in a change of emotions in a person, right? They can be somebody that is more prone to being sad or depressed. They're very irritable, or maybe even result in angry outbursts more frequently than may have been seen before. Now, your body also reacts to stress internally. Everything that we talked about were things that you can see on the outside. Now, your body is going to react to stress also internally. Now, whenever it's stressed, it's going to release a hormone commonly referred to as a stress hormone. Now, this is going to be really centered around where the liver and the adrenal glands. And I know some of those medical terms may be a little bit complex. All that really does, those two organs, they're going to work with your blood sugars. Now, this is going to work to make that balancing of the blood sugar in addition to those stress hormones that are released into those organs. It makes it difficult to manage your blood sugar levels. And I mean, we see other medical conditions that have to do with the blood sugars and how it's maintained that can cause some potential problems there as well. Now, in stressful situations, for example, like meeting multiple deadlines, or that feeling you get whenever you're stuck in traffic and you get a little bit upset, that's going to cause increased heart rates. Now, those are common things. We talked about those being included into routine stress. That increased heart rate over an extended period of time can eventually lead to potential heart problems, and that's where we see it working internally. In addition to that, we see that added stress. We see the weight of the physical part of it the mental part of it, and also the mental, physical, and emotional part of it. Sorry about that. Now, in conclusion, we can see how everyday stress can impact a person's body. And we already talked about the physical, mental, and emotional parts. And we clearly outlined what stress was, what the different types were, and we just finished discussing how it impacts the body both internally and externally. So that added pressure, how that can impact us over that extended period of time. By understanding just what stress is, as we started off, that term stress kills doesn't seem like a far-fetched idea anymore.